Hello and welcome to this very exciting inaugural edition of DMA Decision Makers, a fortnightly in-depth interview series with some of the leading lights of the Asian and global digital media and marketing scene. My name is Neil Moore, and this time I'm delighted to be joined by Rahul Welde, who is the Vice President of Media for Asia, Africa, the Middle East and Turkey at consumer brand giants Unilever. The purpose of these interviews is to try and extract some of that unique insight people like Rahul have acquired over years in this incredible industry. So, let's get started. Rahul, your role includes areas of media strategy, planning and buying, but with the recent explosion in platforms and devices and content and connectivity, where do you even begin to assess what to spend your money on?
I think that's an important question, because there are just so many options now when you think of the various avenues through which we can connect with consumers. So purely from a media perspective, there's an enormous amount of options out there, and whether it is traditional media, which is television, print, billboards, whatever you have, and on the other side you've got a whole lot of new digital media, whether it's internet, whether it's mobiles, and a whole host of avenues. So in essence, really the job of reaching consumers has become incredibly challenging and exciting from that perspective.
What are the specific criteria that help you assess your purchases though?
What one looks at even more so now than ever has is really about engagement, and how can we actually excite consumers, how can we get them to begin to interact with our brands in a manner of speaking, and actually sort of build advocacy or build a degree of loyalty or a fan base.
You're a self-styled advocate of non-traditional thinking. By that, do you mean non-traditional media, or what's your definition?
No, I think non-traditional media and non-traditional thinking are two very different aspects. So let me explain what I mean by non-traditional thinking. So firstly, I think non-traditional thinking can be applied in traditional media as well. So for instance, how can we use TV more creatively rather than have a television commercial? So could you actually participate in content-led innovations? Could you actually become part of programs by themselves, or have brands really live within the space of the TV show itself? So that, in a manner of speaking, is non-traditional thinking in a traditional media. And equally, more so than ever, non-traditional thinking or new thinking is relevant to new media. So whether it's digital, whether it's mobiles, whether it's gaming, and a host of other avenues which are there in front of us, one can actually leverage all the channels quite differently.
You cover a vast area of the globe in your role, and every company has a different way of partitioning the world. What are the attributes that you use to define territories?
See, when you think of the region, firstly, it is vast. We all know that. I think the second important part is that it's very diverse. So we have, so whether you look at countries and where they are in terms of their evolution, it's very, very diverse. So the developed markets like Japan and Australia on one side, and let's say extremely developing markets like Africa on the other. And what this means from a media landscape perspective is that there are really no one size fits all kind of solutions. And at the end of the day, while there are broad principles which apply and which apply across the world probably, the nuances in each of the market are very, very different. So when we think of what holds all these two things together, I think it's the fundamentals of really making sure that there is a mass audience which we are able to reach, and at the same time engage those mass audience in a very compelling manner.
As you say, Rahul, the countries you look after are hugely diverse in terms of culture, connectivity. Where do you acquire the knowledge personally to execute effectively in very different markets?
The bottom line is that we have to walk the street, right? And we really have to live the space in a given country. We have an incredible team out there in the markets which has their ears very close to the ground and has really embraced and assimilated all the learnings which are relevant to that marketplace. And equally, when we think of this vast region, what is important is that we are able to cross-pollinate the learnings from one market to another. So for example, if we have a great rural program in India, how can we bring it to Vietnam? Or if we have a great activation digital-led program in social media, let us say in a country like Turkey, how can I quickly take it to Indonesia? So there is a degree of similarity.
And how do you apply digital differently across different markets?
Digital is growing everywhere, right? And is growing everywhere at a rapid pace. So even if you think of the most developed markets, they're probably not growing so much in penetration because they are highly penetrated, but they're growing in the form factor. So newer forms, whether it is smartphones, tablets, or whatever else you have, is actually making sure that there's growth in those markets as well. The second broad trend is that everywhere across, again, the consumption of digital, and whether you think of it as online or mobiles or on the go, but whichever way you look at it, digital consumption is growing. So these are common trends across markets. It's just that the pace of transformation, the pace of change varies, and undoubtedly the markets which are actually at the lower end of the spectrum are growing very fast. But unmistakably, digital is transforming the lives of our consumers across all geographies, and it is transforming the way we look at media from a brand's perspective across all geographies. So I can't isolate a single market where I could say that the treatment is different. I mean, fundamentally it is to stay ahead of the curve, and in fact to catch up with the consumers and to make sure that we use media, we leverage what is out there in very much a manner in which consumers are using it.
It seems to me mobile and digital are actually converging. In the developing markets, the mobile is the main access point to the internet, and in developed markets, smartphones are giving richer experiences akin to the desktop computer. How are you applying mobile?
In the developing markets, for sure, mobile is very, very large, but equally the form factor of the mobile is very, very basic. So what I mean by that is fundamentally it's about SMS driven, it is basic feature phones, and they haven't really got, consumers haven't really got into the smartphone kind of penetration. So what it means is that the solutions that we tailor for developing markets when you think of mobile have to be very different from the solutions that we think of in the developed markets. Where, let's say for example, if you take a Singapore or an Australia, smartphone penetration is very high, and therefore the solutions are very different. But at the heart of it, there is a new avenue of being able to land brand messages with our consumers, and typically these are consumers either on the go or they're even sort of lying back and surfing on their mobiles, or just having some form of interaction. So the opportunities are enormous. I think I have to say that this is an area in which everybody is experimenting right now. No one has yet cracked the code of what exactly and how it can be leveraged. But what we know from the numbers is that the growth in mobile usage as a marketing device, right, as a form of communication beyond the usual SMS, text and calling, is growing enormously, and therefore that presents really exciting opportunities in terms of what we could do.
That's all for now, Rahul. Thank you so much for joining us, and next time we're going to talk a bit more broadly about the industry, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you. Pleasure.
Thanks to Rahul for that. Don't forget, the next part of the interview will be out very shortly, and you can find more up-to-date news and information about the digital marketing scene at digitalmarketasia.com. For now though, that's all from me.